Hold on a second. I had the other tab open, so I started hearing my own stream. But what's up, everybody? This is another stream, episode 10 of Hot Takes, which, again, can't believe I got this far because I'm usually like procrastinate a lot if I'm going to keep it real. So, yeah, this episode, we're going to be focusing on whether or not Cyberpunk deserves a redemption arc or does it deserve hate? Which I'm very conflicted about because recently I picked up the game maybe like 3 weeks ago since it came out back in 2020 of December, which is insane. It's been that long, but I bought the game day one on PS4, and of course, the game was broken. It was fucking broken. I couldn't play it. So many bugs, and we're going to get into that. And so I ended up dropping the game as a result. And there were some story things that I had concerns with, but I dropped the game. And what happened was years now later, I've come back after a patch. They patched the game or they put out a next gen version of the game last year. What's up, Finbar? And I decided this year, why not, dive in and play the PS5 version. Now, before I get into anything, because there's going to probably be spoilers, I thought I would kind of recommend or give a recommendation of this game. Now, this game is not perfect. I think back when it first released, you saw a bunch of people giving it nines and tens, and which I don't think this game deserves a nine or a 10. In my opinion, I would say an eight, maybe a 7.5. I don't usually do ratings, but that's the range I would give it. It's a solid game. It's a fun game. It's been patched. It's been fixed. There's going to be DLCs coming out. And even though, yes, it did take this long, which I think is unfortunate, the game, to me at least, still deserves to be played. And that's what I'm going to say. That's really my opening statement. And we're going to get into why I say that. But first, I want to talk about why it failed. Why did Cyberpunk fail? This is going to be an interesting little segment here because there's really, I want to say, five reasons. I wrote down five reasons here, and that is broken promises. CDPR, they gave so many promises of this game. They talked about this game for at least 8 years, which is crazy. And then the unplayable state and bugs on the console version. Now there was bugs present on the PC version. I didn't play it on PC, but it did run a little bit better on PC when it first launched. And then we have cut content, which there is a lot of cut content from this game, right? Not only was there cut features in the broken promises, things that we knew beforehand, but there was things that are now in the game that we're discovering were completely left out. And then we have the constant delays. This game was delayed. I think it was originally going to come out in April of 2020. Then it got pushed to September 2020 and it kept going. And so we're going to get into that. And then finally, I think 8 years meant extreme amount of hype. There's rarely a game is announced and it takes 8 years to release, right? Um, but we are seeing games that are taking a while that we know are in development, like GTA 6, the next Naughty Dog game. So there's a lot of different things. But I want to get to some comments here because I didn't realize there's some comments. What's up, Chronic? We got Vortex here, which is awesome, and Arkham is here. So Arkham says, "Here's my perspective with all the patches and everything. It's a good game, but I'm not sure it deserves a redemption because at launch they gave us a broken game." Now I understand that part, but here's the thing: I think you can acknowledge that the game is broken at launch, but if the game is dirt cheap, the game is patched, and the game is decent, I don't really see any reason to not pick up and try the game. It may not be your cup of tea, but still, there's a lot of games I gave the benefit of doubt after it was broken. And I admit that it was broken and they should never released it. And that's why I didn't buy it. But Cyberpunk was a game that I did buy, unfortunately, and it was just sitting on my shelf. This was a game that I was very excited for. What's up, Carl? So, well, the problem is in to whether or not it's playable, the problem or all the promises they made and lies to so many people during the initial presentation. They did. That's why I'm going to get into that because there's a lot of things, even though, like I said, I like this game, but I could separate the fact that there were broken promises. There was all these different problems of why it failed. And that's why I wanted to start off the stream talking about it before I really dive into why I like the game and why it deserves at least some sort of praise, right? Because there are, I think, good elements of the game, and I would want to see a sequel build on it, right? Now, there's other games that I probably in the future will talk about, like Fallout 76. And Fallout 76 was a fucking nightmare of a game, but they went in and they fixed it. Which I don't want. I want a game that works immediately, but at the same time, a redemption in my opinion, usually is because that there is something good about it, which I think there is a lot good about Cyberpunk. That's why I say redemption, right? You come from a bad place and then you can always be somehow redeemed, right? Some way, right? So that's really my argument. Now, getting into some of the promises, the broken promises that were made for this game, because some people don't really know, but things like AI. AI in the game, in my opinion, is absolutely fucking abysmal. Okay. And I know that there's a lot of games where the AI is terrible. It's fucking awful. I was even talking about last night Deathloop. Deathloop is a game that has really bad AI where you could just mow them down and no one does anything. And in Cyberpunk, there was a lot of promises that the AI would be interesting. It would be dynamic. You would be walking around the city, looking around and seeing people, AIs or NPCs on a script. They would actually have lives in this universe, which is not true, right? Recently, they patched in where NPCs kind of interact with you. One time I was standing at a corner and basically this lady was taking a selfie and I walked in and I poked my head into the shot and she got mad, which I don't know if that was intentional, but I thought it was kind of funny, right? That did happen. And so the AI, like, yeah, there's so many different, problems again where I'm just shocked. I'm really am shocked that they promised the world and back, right? I mean, we another promise that they made, multiplayer. There's gonna be multiplayer with this game. It did not come out. Okay, in fact, it was canceled. They had immersive police involvement, which is essentially like in the game there is a wanted system. It's very similar to GTA if you've played GTA, where essentially, if you kill someone, you do anything that's illegal, the police are going to come after you. But in the game, it's very weird because you can get a bunch of stars and realistically they only send the police, which is weird because in world there are the police and then you have medtech, which is basically they're sort of like um, a private military who goes after cyber psychos, right? If there's, terrorist acts or whatever, they are the ones that step in and they're like the heavy duty cops, right? So again, they rarely show up, even though they're an interesting aspect of cyberpunk. There's a lot of interesting lore that's incredible, as Chronic was saying, right? There's so this is why I say it deserves a redemption because the lore, the storytelling, the characters, and some gameplay elements, if built on, could make a very good game, right? And it would be ashamed if it went completely to waste because again, The Witcher 3, a lot of people love The Witcher 3, but a lot of people hate Cyberpunk, and a lot of people hate Cyberpunk because again, the marketing, and all the other things that I'm gonna list off, right? So I don't want to go too into detail about all the broken promises, but they did promise wall running, um, and verticality, which is weird because it's a city where you can climb and there's a lot of buildings, but again, there's really no verticality, which I think is a shame, because you could do a lot of interesting things with that. Uh, the day and night cycle, weather cycle, again, things that were promised. They're going to have crazy sandstorms. They don't really appear in the game. There's usually scripted sandstorms in missions. So what else do we have here? Brain dances. They were going to have a lot more brain dances. What else do we have here? I mean, a lot obviously polished game, and the transportation system was another thing that was cut that you could see in the game, and you could see in I want to believe the re-revealed trailer. So the second reveal of the game, which was I want to say 2018, which I may pull up. I may pull up. Let's see if I can pull that up. I don't want to get uh, you know, I don't want to get struck or anything or claimed, but we'll just go along. Let me see. I have it here all organized, so I'm just going to present it. Let me share screen. There we go. So as you can see right here in the game, I got it muted, so it's okay. But in the game, right in the beginning, this was the reveal of the game, as you can see. And it was supposed to be on a train. You could see the train was going to be in the game, and that's it. But it was a little bit of a clip there, and it's in the game. You could see it. I'm going to stop sharing. You could see it in the game. People even climbed on it. And you can walk on the rail system. It's not in the game. The Witcher again, it had a rocky start, but it wasn't comparable, right? And I know you're gonna say that too, right? But all these different things, yeah, flying vehicles was not promised, but there was vehicle customization, which should have been in the game because there's a lot of cool vehicles. There's a lot of vehicles. This is another thing that I like about the game. Um, Lots of Easter eggs to other popular franchises, right? You can find the Batmobile in the game. You can find the Dukes of Hazzard car in the game, right? All these different little things, and they're really cool. They're very cyberpunky, obviously. So, there's a lot of again Easter eggs in the game that are really cool. But again, yeah, the train system, the flying vehicles, again, yeah, the Akira bike as well, of course. And this is another thing too that you could do. I mean, this is a little animation, but when you break in the game, you could do the Akira drift. The famous drift where everybody has copied it, right? What's up, Aaron? So you know, I understand, giving a chance and all these different things, but this is why I say going forward with games, don't tell us anything about the game. Don't give us a release date. Don't show us no CGI footage. Just wait. Wait until like the game is about ready, right? Maybe a year away, and then show us, right? And I know they're trying to do that with Starfield. They've been doing that with Breath of the Wild. We haven't even seen anything from Spider-Man, right? And these are the most anticipated games from each of the big three, right? So, you know, broken promises, all these different things. Don't hype up your game, in my opinion. This is why it failed. Right? CDPR came on stage. They promised us the world, and that's why the game failed. Stop promising shit. That's what I got to say. Stop doing it. I'm glad that Tears of the Kingdom, they're not showing anything. Right? We got two trailers. That's it. That's all I need. Okay? Stop with all of the hype. We don't need that because the more hype you get, especially over 8 years, you end up with a game that people are now going to go, oh, it's going to suck. It's going to be this, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's expectations are so high where it's like maybe we shouldn't have no expectation. And that's something that I do now, right? What's up, Tony? Um, where if a game is announced, I'm waiting. I'm going to wait until reviews come out. The same thing, I know Arkham's here, but I'm going to say the same thing about Suicide Squad. I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait and see if the game is good. The game is good, but I need to play it first, or I need to see some reviews. I need to see reviews on people that I trust, right? But I'm not gonna rush into a game anymore, thinking, "Oh my god, this is gonna be amazing." There's very few games that I do trust, but not, or I should say, studios. But again, I don't want to say too much on why Cyberpunk failed. But again, there's cut content, right? There was a whole area that is very interesting to cyberpunk lore, right? And this is another thing people need to understand and why I say there needs to be redemption. Cyberpunk is not an original series, right? This is based on a tabletop game by Mike Pondsmith, right? And he created it back in the 80s. And obviously, it was amalgamation of different things, right? Akira, Blade Runner, and he was playing up more on the punk angle. And the tabletop game is very interesting, right? Because there's a lot of detail characters, right? A character who obviously plays a main part in this game is Johnny Silverhand, but there's another character called Morgan Blackhand, and he's an important character too. And I mean, he's not in the game, but he's part of the franchise. And I'm going to get into the deep lore because the lore is very interesting. I would describe it as, if Fallout is more political, right? It's between two giant powerhouses. Cyberpunk is basically if the US government failed and the corporations took over, right? And it's not just the corporations of how it started and how the fall of America in this universe fell, right? It's very interesting and there's a lot of different things that they can play with, right? Especially for a second game, right? So, but yeah, broken promises, unplayable state. I want to even show you before we move on. I want to show you just how bad this game is. We all know how bad it was, right? But I bought the game and I remember seeing the bugs in this game. Okay, I don't want to spend too much again, but I'm going to share my screen just so I could show you how truly bad it was. Okay. So again, some of the bugs here. I want to skip around and see if I can find some. Some of the bugs they're very obscure, but sometimes again like this, the floating T-posing enemies, weird little things like this. What is this? What is going on here? This guy's riding this dude. What is he doing here? Bizarre, totally bizarre. Things like that, right? Things like this, glitches. Sometimes this still happens, right? Clipping. I mean, that happens in a lot of games where you get a lot of clipping, but this is the kind of clipping you're like, oh my god, what is going on? Sometimes this was another glitch. I mean, yeah, exploding cars. This still happens. I have lots of screenshots of stuff like that. But another thing that happened, I remember, yeah, piggyback riding. I don't know what he was doing with that dude. Very strange. But another thing that was in the game was the wanted system. As I mentioned, you would shoot someone and the police were on your ass. They would just randomly spawn right behind you, and it wouldn't be one or two, it would be eight of them. So you couldn't get away. You would be dead in within seconds. This is the type of just glitching nightmare that this game was when it first launched back 2 years ago. Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. And it should not, everybody should be pissed off. They should be pissed off because, again, you, more specifically me, because I paid for it, I was robbed. They robbed me. They blindfolded me. They put a bag over my head and they robbed me. And we never got to have a good game, a good experience until 2 years later. Maybe they should have released the game 2 years later. Maybe it should have come out last year, maybe this year, right? Because even though the game was announced back in 2013, let's look at the trailer. Again, not going to spend too long. This is the trailer. It says 10 years ago now. You present this. Look what it says right here. 10 years ago, 2013, at E3. And the trailer again, I was more when they first showed this, I was like, oh man, this looks sick. What is this going to be? We rarely get Cyberpunk games on the AAA level, right? That look like Blade Runner and stuff. By the way, this whole cutscene with this character, there's a mission in the game that involves this character, which is very interesting. But still, again, bizarre, totally bizarre, totally bizarre. Yeah, they should have called the game Cyberhunk, Cybergunk, whatever, because it was a mess. It was an absolute mess. I heard they're going to switch to Unreal Engine 5. And I know they have multiple studios working on different projects, right? They got the remake of the first Witcher game, then they got Witcher 4, then they obviously have the Cyberpunk sequel. They're probably going to make a multiplayer Witcher or Cyberpunk game at some point in time. But yeah, that's why everything failed. I know everybody in the comment here, they're dunking on me, Finbar's dunking on me, Arkham's dunking on me. How can you like this game if it's broken, buggy? And we're gonna move on. Why do I like Cyberpunk? What is the appeal of this game? Okay. And the first thing that I want to say is that This game, I don't care what anybody says, this game has some of the best written characters in a video game. Some of the side quests involving these characters are even though they're, some of them are kind of short, but some of them are long, some of them are super dark, but a lot of these characters, in my opinion, they deserve to be in, you know, an adaptation, right? They should be either in an anime, a live action series, because they were so good, right? And I want to start with Jackie and V. Obviously, V is the playable character. You don't really get all that much development because this is, or at least was supposed to be, an RPG. But Jackie is a character that you start off in the game, and I want to pull up the clip where you do the heist, if I can pull it up because I have it here, where you do the heist in the beginning of the game because there's different acts in the game. You have Act One, then you have Act Two, and essentially the game sort of works on, you're this. You could pick the life path. You have three different life paths in the game, and even though those don't matter so much, again, a broken promise. But ignoring all that, you start the game, you get introduced to V, you get introduced to Jackie through your life path, and you become friends with Jackie, right? And Jackie is, someone who grew up with the Valentinos, which is a gang in the Cyberpunk universe, which is kind of funny. They essentially are a gang that just picks up women. That's how they started, right? They weren't actually like a violent gang. They would just go around Night City and pick up women, right? And a lot of people would get, their husbands and boyfriends would get pretty pissed off. And so it led to gang wars and stuff, right? Because this gang was stealing people's girls, right? But he's part of the gang, and you kind of, move in with him and his mom, and you get to learn about him. And he the thing is, even though you're not with him for very long, again, you start to see that this character is trying to escape this world, right? Because Night City is a hellhole. Okay, you can't move up. No, you could try to become part of the gang of Tonys. That's what it is, man. But yeah, Night City, you try to move up, you really can't. And so V and Jackie have to resort to being essentially mercs in the city, right? Doing all these terrible things, right, to get paid to try to move up. And one of the things that's in the tabletop game is that in Cyberpunk, it is you basically can't live there. Most people are homeless in this world, right? Where they're on the streets and they don't have any cyberware. So Jackie and V are pretty well off, right? Even though they live in the slums, they're still pretty well off, right? Which is crazy, right? Yeah, you got to get them eddies. Okay. If you don't got no eddies, you're pretty much dead on the side of the road and everybody's going to walk over your body. This is how brutal it is, right? Where life goes on, but you're going to be seeing dead bodies, right? Just lying all over the place. Okay. No one cares. That's how Night City is. And so you get to obviously see Jackie and see that, oh, he wants this desire to escape Night City, right? Everybody has this desire, but some people are just sick in the head, right? And you do this heist. It's this big deal. You get Dex. He's this fixer. You get your whole team together. You got T-Bug, all these characters in the beginning of the game, and then it goes to absolute shit. Okay. This heist scene, it's a great fucking mission that you play through. It's not hard because it's introducing some stuff, but this is, you start and you're inside and you're supposed to get the relic, right? This is the device that they're trying to steal and sell off to make money, right? And essentially it goes to shit, right? Where the son of Arasaka, he kills his father, who's the CEO of the company, and basically right in the middle of the heist, the building goes on lockdown and you're fucked. You are essentially fucked and you can't escape because now everybody thinks you're behind this killing of the CEO of this mega corporation, right? And this is another character that I absolutely love. Um, Adam Smasher. What a fucking villain. What a crazy ass villain. This guy who is just obsessed with cyberware, with trying to change his body and mold it. Super interesting. This is one of probably my favorite villains in a video game. And he was great in the anime too, where he is just he's a sociopath. He has no feelings whatsoever. And he's just like, humanity, being a human, you have feelings and he doesn't want that at all, right? So he tries to mold himself into a machine, but he can't, right? No, not Adam Smasher, Adam. Adam like Adam and Eve. But yeah, it's kind of funny that when you type in Adam Smasher, you do get Adam Smasher, the DC character, which is pretty funny. But yeah, this heist is great. You go right, they try to escape. I want to get to the part where they crash. But yeah, you gotta run around the building, you gotta find a way out, and you know, they spot you, they're gonna like turn the corner right there, the jets, and you fall off, and essentially everything goes to hell. Dex shoots you. You have to put the chip, the relic that you were going to steal, into your head, and essentially this is where the plot begins, right? But yeah, this again, Jackie, Adam Smasher, great characters. Jackie obviously dies. He eventually dies, right? From getting shot from those jets. And it's there's a mission later in the game where you have to go to his funeral and you have to find objects and pay respect to him and things like that. Even though they're small little missions, they add on to the world and the characters, right? And there's a bunch more characters. Again, Judy, Pan Am, these are two romance characters. Again, great characters who are very conflicted. They don't really know how to navigate Night City, right? Judy is kind of, she is part of the gang, the Mox gang, which they're sort of overseeing basically like sex work and stuff like that. And they're also being operated by two different gangs, right? You have the White Claws, which is this Japanese gang. So again, there's this conflict with all these different gangs in Night City, right? They all have different ideas. Well, this is a spoiler stream. I already said that. I should have put that at the bottom, but all of this is going to be spoilers, right? So yeah, you have Judy, Pan Am. Everybody loves Pan Am. The way that I ain't gonna spoil that part, but the first time you see Pan Am, you know what everybody's gonna do. They're gonna be screenshotting, they're gonna be taking pictures. Everybody knows. But anyway, that's beside the point. Pan Am, River, another great character. He's the romance for the female V. But he has a dark mission that I'm surprised they put in a video game. Obviously, it's not, super crazy. They don't show anything explicit, but just the idea of let's just say a CP ring that you have to bust, and his nephew, River, is involved with it. And it is very just like, oh my god, like something like this could easily happen in real life where you have someone who is working with troubled youth and they just abuse them, right? So things like that. Again, like this game is not afraid to like show a light of just how dark things can be and how things can get, right? Another character that I absolutely love, he's not a person, he's a AI, Delamain. One of my favorite quests, right? Because essentially what you're doing is you are allowing an AI to either die, to evolve, or to just let it free, right? And even though this game doesn't touch on the idea of artificial intelligence being real if they are on the level of humans, right? Because that's a kind of a concept that we see in Blade Runner, right? With the replicants. All these different things are in that quest where you have to decide. I'm telling you, the Delamain quest where you have to go and pick them up and you gotta listen, and there was the portal Easter egg, right? When the vehicle sounded like GLaDOS. All these different things, right? Where you go in, you capture all the different taxis, right? Because he's a taxi AI, right? And so at the once you collect all the taxis that have gone rogue, you have to come back in, and his HQ has been just torn to shit. Everything is glitching, and you have to basically um, give him this ultimatum where you either pull the plug, which would reset him, or you let him free, or you merge all these different identities that he has, all these rogue AIs, into one that just becomes a sentient being, right? Super interesting quest, and you're like, oh my god, I want to see what happens to Delamain, right? Because even though Delamain is an AI who, he was a little bit janky and he doesn't understand human etiquette, he was still an interesting character where you're like, wow, maybe he is human, right? He has all these different personalities, all these fears and desires, and he has emotions too, but he's an AI. Things like that I think are very interesting, right? And even though Cyberpunk doesn't have a lot of new ideas, right? If you're familiar with cyberpunk as a genre, right? Whether it's the Necromancer book, right? That's a pretty famous book, or if you've seen Blade Runner, or if you watched anime like Ghost in the Shell, there's a lot of ideas that they take from those different mediums or series, right? So yeah, Delamain, great character. There's so many other great characters I could go in depth. There's Claire and her side mission, a great character who, again, has to like reconcile with her husband and her husband's death. So yeah. Now, so as I said, the character writing in this game and the writing and the quest and how they built up some of these character arcs is one of my favorite parts of this game. Right. This is why I love the game. This is why I say it deserves a redemption, because if something has a good story, I always believe that people should, um, you know, people should give it the benefit of the doubt, right? And I know it's hard to sit down and play a long game and get a story right. Sometimes the story is not even told in a traditional like movie way, right? Like Elden Ring, but still, right? So yeah, an exploration of like what humanity or being a human is, right? So like it's very existential. Like, is it just like, does being a human mean that you have a soul? And there's a lot of ideas. There's even a quest in the game where you go and you find this monk who gives you this brain dance, and you put it on and you're in the wilderness. And it's a very interesting quest because at the ending of it, again, this is going to be entirely spoilers. You realize that because because you and Johnny are basically in the same body, even though you're two different souls or beings. It's weird that Johnny didn't actually see what was going on during those times that you had the BD on, right? Which is odd because in most of the game, you start to realize that Johnny is you, right? He moves, he feels everything, he's talking in your mind. People can even hear him talking at a certain point. So it's almost weird where it's like, how come Johnny didn't witness this experience that you just had? You went on this entire quest, but yet you did, right? And it's sort of hinting at the fact that maybe even though Johnny is an engram, he's just code that's simulating a human being or their thoughts. He actually might still be human. He still might have a soul, right? And so there's a lot of different things like that. And again, the game has all these different aspects to it, right? There's the net and how, you know, Johnny's girlfriend Alt lives in the net and how she's sort of like this, you know, crazy net runner who understands AIs, and she can manipulate the net and all these different things. And the net is basically their version of the internet. It's just that they plug into it. And so they almost have like a digital body, right? And there was there's an episode of Black Mirror that's very similar, probably one of my favorite episodes of Black Mirror, where it's almost like when people die, they take their brains and put it into a code where they can sort of live in this digital heaven, right? Even though it doesn't exist and they're dead. So again, very interesting. I would love to see um, a game or a sequel to this. This is one of the things I had on my list where you're just exploring the net and being in a digital space. It's very weird. But yeah, there's a AI war. Basically, in the game, there's a black wall. They call it the black wall, right? And you learn about it during the Voodoo quest, the Voodoo Brothers quest, where they explain that the black wall is basically Netwatch. I think it's either Netwatch or this famous hacker created it, where it separates the normal net that everybody uses from rogue AIs, right? And it's actually revealed in the Delamine quest that Delamine actually might have been a rogue AI from the Blackwall, right? And so it's very interesting, right? And there's multiple quests that actually hint at the fact that rogue AIs may have escaped from the Blackwall and have started using human bodies to do nefarious things, right? And so there's a quest. I haven't finished this quest yet, but I know what happens in it, where you're basically tasked with helping this mayor, because they're starting to see weird things. Right, one night, an intruder breaks in and he shoots him. The mayor shoots the intruder, but essentially he wakes up and there's no evidence. Right, and you find out that there was actually brainwashing involved, and that there's a mysterious man who in the game is referred to Mr. Blue Eyes, who seems like he might be controlled by an AI, right? Which again, super fascinating, right? Being a human being being controlled by an uh, artificial intelligence, right? And them not knowing. Very fascinating, interesting things. But I want to move on and kind of just touch on the gameplay because the gameplay is definitely not the greatest, right? This is not like super amazing, but you can twist the game in a way where I am shocked at some of the things that I see people do in the game. Like you can make a build that is basically like Doom guy from Doom Eternal and Doom 2016, where you could just run up to people, punch them, shoot them with a shotgun, and double jump. And it is absolutely insane. And I kind of just want to show that because I do have a clip of someone doing a Doom style uh build, which is just like I can't like it's very interesting when games do things like this. I'm gonna have to put on like uh, 1.5 speed. So let me just share this. Yeah, or anybody could be controlled by an AI. Could you imagine how crazy that would be? Being controlled by a computer and not knowing that you're controlled by it, and no one would know. Like something like that. It's very interesting. And you know what? Um, listen, I know I don't like remakes or reboots, but if they are going to reboot Terminator, and I know James Cameron was talking about AIs, I would want to see a story where the Terminator is controlling people, or maybe even something where he's not just controlling a robot body, but he's actually controlling humans. It's a very interesting idea. I would love to see it more in other movies and books and stuff like that because it's one of the more interesting aspects. And there's so many theories about it. Like there's an entire iceberg video that goes in depth about like the possibility that these rogue AIs might be aliens. It's insane, but it's actually in the game. There's a lot of hints at it. So this whole idea goes like super super deep. Yeah, who knows? We may be living in a simulation like the Matrix. But yeah, I want to show this gameplay. I keep here we go. Just put that there. So yeah, this is the Doom build. It's going to be sped up a little bit, but yeah, he's driving to the location. He gets in. I'm going to skip around, but yeah, this and he's just running and gunning. And I've seen mods where you could basically in the game you have this cyberware where it's like I think it's called a San Vista, which was in the anime, which allows you to basically speed like basically run at the Flash or Quicksilver speed, right? Where everything is moving in slow motion and you can manipulate things. And so one guy actually had this run where he was running and killed everybody on the map, and just like seeing how fast everybody died within seconds, where he threw the grenade and then shot a gun and then ran over and then threw knives, because in the game you have throwing knives, and then he ran back and got into the car and he sat in the car and just witnessed everybody die, which was insane. But that's a mod though, unfortunately. I wish that was in the game. You could slow down time in the game, but it's not to that extent. um but yeah, where he's just like running and gunning and just like fucking ripping up everybody, and it basically plays like Doom, right? If you played Doom 16, I love that game. I still haven't played Doom Eternal, but I love boomer shooters and I love this frantic nature of it, and you could do that in Cyberpunk. And another aspect that I love about Cyberpunk, um, the gameplay wise, is the quick hacking. I think this is the best feature in the game where you can essentially build a build that is called like a net runner, where you can hack into different things and you can sort of, cause like weapon glitches. You can, um, you know, cripple the enemy. You could send out a virus that attacks everybody. So you could just wait and watch everybody just die slowly because they interacted with each other and caught a virus. Super interesting. There's a lot of different ideas, but I wish they played it out a lot more because in the game you find out just how difficult it is to hack, right? It involves breaking ice, which essentially ice is this code that has different layers. And so you have to break each layer in order to affect a a person's cybernetics or a ship's cybernetics, right? So yeah, net running. I have one, and it's crazy. Like it's like a mix. It's like I use guns, assault weapons, and hacking and stuff, and it goes fucking crazy. Where I'm like, oh my god, the slickness of the shooting is very good. I love it. It's not. This is what I mean. It's not super innovative or new in that sense, right? Where it's like it does play like a very, modern shooter where you can, go around the corner and shoot, things like that. But the way that you can customize and make it fit in the game, right? And it's very interesting, right? And this is why I'm so devastated, because I wish you could do things like adding more to the quick hacking, right? Maybe you could kind of hack a whole building or hack a car or all these different things, right? Because you don't have vehicle combat in the game, which you think there would be, right? There's flying cars, there's guns everywhere. There's a gun shop on every corner. Like you would think someone would put a gun on their car. Like, come on, right? Um, but yeah, ICE was inside the computer that was part of. I'm not sure what this is referring to. You're gonna have to explain that one. Um, so what we got here. So there's a whole system that was ripped out where you could hack into people's minds. Yeah. Oh wow. Was that cut content? Because um that would have been interesting. But yeah, there's a bunch of I don't know how many of the quick hacks there are in the game. I'm still, even though I'm 80 hours, I'm like nowhere near done, because I'm just like, once I get into an open world game that I actually like, I feel obligated to just play all of it, and it just pisses me off because then I can't play other games. Um, but again, I love the quick hacking and the side quests and the gigs, because even though gigs are sort of, they're just really there to make money, right? Oh, Shadowrun. Okay, yeah, I've heard of Shadowrun. Right, is another Cyberpunk tabletop game, and they have Ice. Not okay. Yeah, I haven't looked into Shadowrun, but I did hear about it. So yeah. I might have to check that out. And I'm trying to get into the Cyberpunk tabletop game, because it is very interesting. And the one aspect um, that I did like about this game, that's again lore wise, um, is the cyber psychosis or cyber. There's essentially, just to break it down, cyber psychosis is where the theory is that the more people have cybernetics on, um, the more crazy they would get, right? And so a character like Adam Smasher, who has a lot of cybernetics, is essentially crazy, right? That's why he's a sociopath, or he would just sort of snap and just kill people, right? But it kind of depends, right? Because some people don't show or exhibit it, while other people it's very apparent, right? But one of the quests in the game is I'm forgetting the character's name, but she's a journalist turned fixer, and she sends you to fight or to take down some of these cyber psychos, right? And when you read a lot of the shards in the game, you actually discover that a lot of them may have not exhibited the theory of cyber psychosis, right? It's not that they had a bunch of cybernetics that made them crazy. It might be the fact that, they have all these issues in their lives, right? They have a lot of mental health issues. Some of them lost their jobs. A lot of them have just become, either schizophrenic, right? There's a lot of ideas that it could be a mental health reason, right? And the interesting part of it is, I mean, even though it's called cyber psychosis, right? Which a lot of people read differently. They think it means cyber psycho, like you're going crazy or you're psychotic, or not psychotic, I should say, like a psychopath, right? Where you're just insane and you want to kill a bunch of people, but it's actually reads as psychotic, right? So, and I seen someone explain that in the comments, because I seen this on threads where people just think, well, cyber psycho is just someone who loves killing people, right? And that is the case, because Adam Smasher is technically he has cyber psychosis, but he doesn't actually show it, right? So it's very interesting, right? Because there's not a lot of people who basically all their body is just cybernetics, right? Like that was actually in the anime where David, his whole body was just cyberware, right? And that's why at the ending he snapped, right? Um so it's weird. The anime has the original theory of, the more cyberware you have, the more crazy you get. But in the game, they go a lot more in detail and kind of hint at the fact that no, this might be more to it, right? There might be some mental health at play. Um, People just snap, right? Or even the fact that they're distant from their humanity, right? That they don't feel like they're human anymore because they have this cyberware. So there's a lot of interesting things about that, and I wish you could have cyber psychosis in the game, because I mean it's almost kind of the way that I would look at it is it's almost like having a radiation and fallout where you could kind of use it to your benefit sometimes. And I wish that it was either a perk or a feature that or a mechanic where and by the way, because I know I'm all over the place, there's actually a mod where you can have cyber psychosis and it gives you benefits, but um, it's not in the game, right? If you play the console version or the vanilla version on PC, you're not going to get that mod, right? Or that feature, I should say. So yeah, that's really why I like Cyberpunk. That's my thoughts. I know it was very long. How long are we in? I got to see how because I can't see the time on StreamYards. Um, let's see, 40-ish minutes. Okay. So I'm gonna just keep going. I'm just gonna keep going. I don't care. I'm gonna talk about this, vent my frustrations or what I like about it. But yeah, I wish you could customize your cyberware more like how Dex and Johnny had it. Yeah. That was another thing I wish that was in the game. Because you could kind of see um just how like weird some characters can get, right? Where they could just have like a whole arm that's a robot arm looking thing. Um or they can literally change their physical body type like David in the anime. So I agree. I wish that too. I kind of like it where they don't have cyberware because it's very unique. There's not a lot of people who don't have cyberware, so I kind of made my character not visibly have it, even though technically he does, right? So, but yeah, this is something I wish to. And seeing mods, if you go online and look on the subreddit, so many people take photos of their custom cyberware, and it's super cool. Like the customization in the sequel, I hope, is just like crazy. Because now I think that's going to be a big thing with Tears of the Kingdom. I know Chronic doesn't like Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild, but yeah, that's what I've heard about the game is there's going to be a lot of customization, which I'm not against. I am not against. Gave his character a third, 3-foot cybercock. Yeah, you could do that. It's weird. You could have a big dick in the game and it has no impact whatsoever, which is weird. Just weird. Like, why could you customize your dick size and your vagina if you doesn't do anything? Yeah, that's in Cyberpunk, by the way. Yeah, it's weird. I mean, there are some crazy sex scenes in the game, but again, it has no impact. Very weird. Um, so yeah, but as for the things I don't like about the game, it's probably the driving. The driving in the game, it feels like you're driving on ice. None of the vehicles feel like they handle differently. It pisses me off a lot just driving around. So I end up just resorting to using a bike because it's just easier, it's faster, you could drift better, you could brake easier. So, but yeah, those are the little things I don't like, and obviously the level of depth that the game is somewhat lacking. There's depth, but it's not the level that you expect from CDPR, right? So, but yeah, I still think like overall the game is a decent game. It's an 8, right? An 8 or a 7.5 in terms of what it does and how you can push it. And if you have mods and you buy it on PC, like the experience is just absolutely crazy, right? But as a vanilla game, even though I'm addicted and I love the game, I would say I would put this because I'm trying to put together a top 100 games and movies list, which is fucking crazy. But yeah, this would be part of it. I don't know where I would put it. It would probably be more in the top area, like the top 50, because I did it's still enjoyable, and I put so many hours into it, like, I just can't hate it, and I understand, again, people's concerns. um, the game was glitchy, it was broken, and we shouldn't accept that, and blah blah blah. But listen, there's a lot of games that people still play that, in my opinion, are just flat out mediocre, right? Um, Gotham Knights. I'm sorry to say, but Gotham Knights is a mediocre game. People still played it, people still enjoyed it. So a game that has this level of depth and writing and the character building and the shooting mechanics and the quick hacking and a lot of different things, the cyberware enhancements, all of that has potential, right? This I don't want this to go away, but yeah, the driving feels so bad, but driving around the city is it's amazing, right? Yeah, and this is the irony, right? This is the irony of Cyberpunk is that the corporate side forced the game out and not the creative side, which I the irony of it all, the irony is so crazy that the corporation is what led to its downfall because that's what happens in the cyberpunk universe. The corporations, these massive evil, they are evil. Okay, they do some crazy evil things, and it's still very fascinating. So I guess moving on from my thoughts, um, I did kind of talk about the franchise potential. There is the tabletop game. I won't talk about this too long, but we did have the anime. There's obviously the tabletop game. We have the table. There's two versions of the tabletop game. There's Cyberpunk Red, and then I think Cyberpunk 2020. Um, and I do want to talk about that a little bit because in Cyberpunk 2077, the part that is almost missing a lot of the lore is the corporation wars that happen, and the downfall of the United States. Because basically, in I want to say like the it was more like the 80s where and this is crazy, by the way. This is like some Alex Jones thinking shit that happens in this universe, where essentially the DA, the FBI, the NSA, and the CIA form together and create this group that's almost like a deep state, and their whole thing is, oh, we're going to control the United States. And so basically, in the '90s, during the drug war, they basically went to South America and took over, Colombia. I think they took over Brazil too, and all these different countries, and basically kind of was trying to like cut the cocaine business in South America, right? Which essentially caused a giant war where a bunch of people died and came back injured, which resulted in cyberware, right? And that's why everybody in the cyberpunk universe has cyberware, right? Is because a lot of them were vets that fought in the drug war in the '90s, and they got dismembered or they became amputees and things like that, right? So, but yeah, it is very ironic. But there's so many things that have happened from I want to say like the '80s up until this game, right? Because it's such a terrible thing that happened where the drug war led to basically the downfall of the United States, and that the European Union had to rise up and, basically become the new world power because basically the four gangs of the United States that took over, and they even killed the president of the United States, right? Um, it was just a shithole, right? Like the US, I think New York City got nuked. A bunch of I think Los Angeles, a natural disaster happened and no one came to save them because the government was just like, fuck LA, like who cares? And so a bunch of people are dead and LA is now flooded. And so, it's just like the string of things that happened in the late '90s and early 2000s that led to now corporations kind of rising up and working with the DA and the FBI, and yeah, even gangs. Like this is another thing too. The gangs in Cyberpunk play a massive role, right? Because there's no government, so crime is rampant. People are trying to survive, and so the gangs basically kind of in the United States, we don't know all the gangs at least, or at least I don't know all the gangs. Um, they had to basically divide up the country and sort of have their own pockets in order to survive because there was no government aid, right? And the corporations, meanwhile, they were still kicking in. Everything was fine business wise because, other countries were okay. They ended up having wars, right? So one time, I think it was like these two air travel companies, they essentially had this corporation war where I think one wanted to buy the other one, and so the merger fell out, and so it just caused a war, like a literal war where people are being suited up and fighting for a corporation, which is insane to think about, going to war for a corporation. Like, I know you see some, these crazy people online doing that, right? The console wars, right? They would go to bat for Microsoft and Sony, but imagine going on a battlefield for a corporation. It's just like so insane, but that's in part of the universe, and it leads to multiple corporation wars, right? And that's probably the most like interesting aspect of Cyberpunk, is that there's so many people who hate but also need the corporations because the corporations are what is providing people, at least in the United States, um, aid and shelter and all these different things that are needed to survive, even though the corporations are using people on to fight their own wars. There's even theories about corporations are cloning people and using as food because the United States doesn't trade anymore. At least, most of the United States doesn't trade with um, other countries anymore, right? So, yeah, imagine Coca-Cola Army and Pepsi Army, like, bro, going to fight a war for McDonald's, bro, like, things like that is just like I couldn't imagine doing something like that. Like, for a country, it makes sense, right? But, like, a corporation, like, that's wild, and so that's the part that interests me, so much. Like I said, there's all this lore and all these different characters. One of the parts that is a big plot point in this game is obviously Johnny Silverhand. And Johnny Silverhand and Morgan Blackhand basically try to take out the Arasaka Corporation, which is they're basically like a military weapon manufacturing company, right? It's them and Militech. And so in 2023, they bomb Arasaka with a nuke, and it caused almost like a McDonald's and Wendy's. Yeah, it's just crazy. But it essentially, the nuclear blast that Johnny and Morgan Blackhead caused, it basically wipes out this one area in Night City, and all these people got, bad radiation and all these terrible things that happen as a result, right? But it didn't lead to the downfall of Arasaka. Instead, it actually helped them, right? Because now everybody was like, "Oh shit, all these people died," right? It was essentially the 9/11 of Night City. I know that sounds bad, but that's what it is in the game, right? And so many people died as a result, and Night City was just like, "What do we do?" Right? And so they had to rebuild, and Arasaka, as sort of revenge, they took Johnny Silverhand, and that's how the events of the game sort of unfold, right? Is that they took him, they killed him, and eventually turned him into an engram to be used later on in the future. But the one character who obviously did all this bombing and helped Johnny Silverhand is Morgan Blackhand, who's not even referenced all that much in the game. I think the only real reference that we have for him is when in the beginning you go to the Afterlife Club, and they have a drink for him, and they make a comment about the fact that he might be, he's not dead, right? He's probably out there doing something. And so there's a lot of theories of what happened to Morgan Blackhand, and he is an important character because he's the foil to Adam Smasher, and it was him and Adam Smasher, while the tower was collapsing, they were fighting and trying to kill each other because they have this whole beef of what's better, meat or metal, right? And so meat obviously being just like human flesh, going up against someone like Adam Smasher, which is he's a human in a robot body, right? And so That's Adam Smasher's like weird obsession. He always walks around and saying metal is better than meat because he's just a sick weirdo. But yeah, all these different things and lore wise and the world building, like to me, like when they said that the anime is only one season, I was so pissed off. I'm not too big into anime, but I was like, why? Like this whole franchise, you could go as far back as the 80s and 90s and have like a cyberpunk retro throwback, right? Or you could show Morgan Blackhand, or you could go explore what happened in between those 50 years of 2023 and 2077. So there's so much that you could do and so many different characters and outside of the United States that it's like this is obviously a franchise. It's like Fallout, it's like The Witcher, it's like all these other Western RPGs that we know and get multiple entries. So I just don't understand why they couldn't um make not even just more games. We know that they're going to make more games because it did sell decently, and despite the controversy, I'm sure they could win back a bunch of people. Even though I know most of the people here are like, oh, the game. I still wouldn't buy the game and blah blah blah. But still, um, as I was saying, there's so much depth, and honestly, I wouldn't mind if they did a live action series. It would be expensive, uh, but you could do it. I'm sure you can do a live action series. Um, maybe just exploring Morgan Blackhand and Johnny Silverhand, that would be pretty cool. And I'm sure at some point in time we will see that get announced. I'm fairly certain because, like I said, this game itself, the writing is so good with the characters and the universe and the ideas that it plays with. If you get in people who are familiar with the genre and want to push it, you could do so many different things. It's gonna be a few years. Like, I don't know when exactly we'll get Cyberpunk, whatever it's gonna be called. I think it's if I had to guess, I'm gonna say Cyberpunk 2099 or something around that era. Um, but yeah, and I know they have 2 different studios, so if I had to guess when we would get it, I may say, like, 2028, 2029, maybe. Because I mean, it again, it does depend. Like, are they gonna like extremely push it, or would they use just the foundation of what we have here? Um, but there is another aspect that I didn't mention that I wish again should have been in the game, which was Pacifica. Now Pacifica is in the game. You go there in one mission, and you can see it's basically the rundown part of Night City. But there is an aspect to Pacifica that is different, which is that in Night City, there are jails, obviously, but there is an area that was basically ran by gangs, and the cops of Night City couldn't do anything about it because it was so dangerous, right? There were so many weapons, lots of dangerous people in there. And so what they did was Pacifica, before it was even finished, it became what is called a combat zone. And I did mention this at the beginning where I said it's like Escape from New York. So or maybe I mentioned on another stream, but basically the combat zone is like Escape from New York. It's essentially a city jail where if you are born or if you're there, then you are living a life sentence. So you cannot leave Pacifica at all. You are just stuck there. Even if you were born there, it doesn't matter. So, and again, you can't explore that. You can go to the gates and you can look inside and see, but you don't see anybody. You know what I mean? So you wouldn't even know what was there, but that is the Pacifica Combat Zone, and I would love to see that in a sequel of some sorts. I have an idea of what they could do with a sequel, and I think moving on, we should talk about that. This is gonna be the last bit. I didn't even really talk about fixing it, but fixing and the sequel idea, DLC idea. Um, whoops, we can sort of get into that, but for the sequel, I think the sequel would be an act of a active fix, a retroactive fix. Oh my god, I can't even speak sometimes. I'm all over the place. But I think a sequel would essentially be fixing the faults of the game, right? It's not the writing, it's not even the core combat or the core gameplay. It's just little things like as I was saying, the combat zone, um, making quick hacking a little bit more in depth, edge running, having cyber psychosis. All these things I would assume would be in a sequel that would fix the game and would change it a lot, right? Add more depth, make it more integral to the world, right? But what I would want to see in a sequel, and that is set up, um, and that I hinted at, is the corporation war. Because in Cyberpunk 2077, what happens is you are at the ending. Obviously, Arasaka is kind of in shambles, and there's a lot of problems, right? It sort of depends on the ending, but that's kind of the gist, right? And throughout the game, you're actually sort of alerted to the fact that Arasaka and Militech, who still have this beef from the last corporate war, they obviously have some issue and they actually might go to war, right? And so I think it would be really interesting if Night City became a basically a an entire combat zone where it's an all-out war with different companies trying to reclaim Arasaka, right? And obviously the fall of Arasaka, or the potential fall, right? Because I think it will take a long time from the ending of the game, or the different endings, because there's four different endings in this game. But I would definitely have the sequel be about the Fifth Corporation War, and and dealing with different corporations, right? Because another thing that I would kind of make it similar to is like Fallout, where there is different factions in Fallout that you can join, right? There's the Brotherhood of Steel. There was all these. I mean, the Brotherhood of Steel is almost in every single game, but there's different factions, right, in every single Fallout game that you could sort of team up, and they're integral to the main story now, right? Because you join them. So I think it would be interesting if you could do that with the corporations, right? Where maybe you could be almost like a someone who hates the corporations, and so you don't join the war and you just fight all of them, or you can maybe be like, oh, I'm going to help rebuild Arasaka, right? Or I'm in a side with Militech, right? Because they have more military aid, right? So, and obviously there's other corporations too, right? There's the some oil companies, and there's companies that make cyberware. So things like that I think would be interesting for a sequel, but also too, because again, talking about Tears of the Kingdom, I think the next step for open world games is probably going to be the level of depth. It's not just gonna be one area, it's gonna be multiple areas, right? And Cyberpunk was gonna have an underground area, and Tears of the Kingdom is rumored to have an underground area and obviously a sort of sky, world, right? So, I think it'd be interesting if Cyberpunk, I mean, it doesn't have to do something like that. I do want verticality in the sequel where you could climb buildings and do parkour and things like that. But I would want a digital open world for the net, or at least some areas you could explore in the net, right? Because the net in the game is just sort of in cutscenes. You can't really walk around, you can't really do anything. It's just cool visuals, right? It's all this code, and you could see your character and other characters. So it'd be interesting to see um you fighting in a digital space, right? Where you can't rely on guns or weapons, melee weapons, right? Melee weapons, I should say. Sorry. So all these different things, it would be interesting to see where there's a physical war and then there's also a digital war. So yeah, things like that again would be very interesting. I also think the sequel should play more into well, I mean they are corporations because I mean they work for profit, but they do aid people, right? Like Max Tech, Trauma Team, and I guess yeah, that would be it, right? So because Trauma Team is again another interesting aspect where they're basically the paramedics of Night City, but they are more military-ish, where they would come in and help people, and if they're under combat or if they're injured and things like that. So, and then they usually, obviously, as I was saying, they do it for profit, right? So you would pay them and be like, "Hey, I'm injured. I have this subscription. Come save me," right? And they would show up. So, and that's what happens at the beginning of the game. but you don't see them again, which is unfortunate. So I would like to see like a life path where you could be a trauma team member who has to now fight in this war with these different corporations, right? But then you could sort of turn into a mercenary. So things like that. What else do I have here? I think that might be it for what I had. Oh, obviously another thing would be clones. Clones is kind of mentioned in this game, but not really. It's not clear why there's no clones, because they do say that clones do exist because of cyberware. I'm gonna have to take a drink because, um, oh man, talking too much. I'm gonna end it soon anyway, but I'm gonna keep going for my own pleasure. I don't care. Um, so yeah, clones again. Weirdly, I mean, I know that it's sort of explained that clones were used to help cyberware. That's why cyberware is a thing because you could easily clone someone's body part, but you couldn't actually clone a full human being because they don't really have a soul. And so, again, I think that's intentional because I wouldn't be surprised if there's a mission or yeah, that's what she said. Yeah. Yeah. But if there's a mission of some sorts, or even if you play as a AI who is operating in a clone body, that would sort of be interesting. That would sort of fit with an RPG, right? They're just like a blank slate. What's this here? Isn't that really what Arasaka was basically researching, developing with a soul hacker and killer, trying to? Yeah, I mean, that's what they were trying to do, right? But here's what they were trying to do, right? They were trying to put, from my understanding, Johnny's engram into the CEOs of Arasaka. I forget his name. It's not a Buru. I forget his name, but the old man, right? Um, that's what they were doing. But the thing is, the body transferring, they didn't actually have the ability to, right? And so I think what they were trying to do with the son of Arasaka was that he was going to die, and then they were going to put the engram of his father into his body, so the father would live out in the son's body, right? I think that's what they were hinting at because it's in a different ending, um, or that might be a theory. I can't remember, but yeah, they don't have the ability to actually clone someone completely, like it's weird because it's like again they do, but they don't. So like I'm a little bit confused by that, and I might have to like look up on Reddit if someone has like thoroughly explained that because it doesn't really make sense. You can clone people, but they're dead. But why does it matter, right? Like why did the CEO need his son's body? Why couldn't he just clone himself and just live on, right? Or was it he couldn't clone himself because he's too old or he doesn't have his young DNA? I don't know. I just yeah, I'm a little confused by that, but I just have a feeling that cloning and essentially like replicants would be a thing in the future for cyberpunk, right? Where there are people who are artificial humans and they exist, right? But I also think there's going to be a possibility that these artificial humans still don't have a soul, and so you could do a plot where it's like it's almost like there's all these artificial soldiers are being created to fight in the corporation war, but the AIs are like, hey, we want to escape from the black wall and live out in reality, right? So it's almost like you know, they're sort of like replicants, right? Because they're both artificial, but it's like they need each other, right? Where it's like, oh, the artificial body and the artificial mind come together to create something that is more human, right? Or human like. So I think that would be an interesting idea. I mean, you could even play as an AI in a a clone body, right? That'd be interesting. I don't know if they would want to continue with V story, right? Where maybe even in all the different endings, he still ends up as an engram. I don't know if I would like that idea. But yeah. Was it to do with cyberpsychosis? The The closer the similar body, the less chances. Possibly, possibly. I mean, that would kind of make sense, but uh, I mean, well, the thing is, the body wouldn't count as a cyberware, right? So it would just like again, I don't know how that would work, right? Is cloning like would you if you were an engram inserted into an artificial body, like would you know that it wasn't your body? Um, Things like that. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of theory crafting possibility with Cyberpunk. There is a lot of just like because again, like we're so far away, but yet there's certain things that they don't have, which is weird. Like I said, like the idea of replicants or androids that we've seen in other cyberpunk genres, or not genres, I should say, but series, or like Blade Runner, and such. They don't exist in the cyberpunk universe. So it's like I'm sure at some point there is going to be, and that's why I say that a sequel should play on that idea. As for the DLC, I think that based on, I mean, we don't know a lot about the DLC, but the fact that the game doesn't explore a Militech, I have a feeling that this is basically going to be the expansion that shows us where Militech is, how they operate outside of Night City, and probably some insights into the new government, and probably exploring the four gangs, and how they led to the fall of the United States, because now it's the new United States. So yeah, maybe we might even fight the president, because I think the president is supposed to be kind of crazy. But we'll see. So I think that might end it, because I pretty much I have notes here, so I pretty much touched on everything. I mean, I didn't really touch on the fixing so much, fixing Cyberpunk. But I mean, realistically, I kind of mentioned it throughout, what I would want in a sequel. I mean, even a longer story, right? Like the story was kind of short. I would want different paths and stuff like that. What else did I have here? Sorry. Um, I did talk about customizable vehicles, just more immersive elements. I mean, these are things. Oh well, the last point I will mention for fixing is, and this is my problem with Cyberpunk, is that the world is so visually interesting. It's like all this neon, bright lights, but the exploration sucks. This is the one thing I don't like about the game. And I love exploring. That's why I love Fallout and Breath of the Wild, is because those games are more just you walking around and looking for things. And in Cyberpunk, it's really not like that at all, which I think sucks because, again, as Chronic was mentioning, there's so many different possibilities that you have with Cyberpunk, where it's almost like, why didn't you have all these buildings accessible and that we can enter and explore and look around? Because then we would find different characters, items, little stories, right? That's why I love Fallout, because in Fallout, you can randomly walk into something like a vault, and even though the vault is empty, you will learn about what happened in the vault. Like, oh my god, all these people killed themselves, right, from radiation poisoning, or other wild and crazy stories. And so, that all happens because you decided, oh, I'm just gonna walk and not follow the main quest, right? But in Cyberpunk, you kind of have to follow either the quest, right? Whether it's gigs, whether it's the side quests, the main quests, or the hustles that you get in the game. So yeah, I wish the exploration was better and there was more things to just draw your eye and be like, oh, what's over here? I'm just gonna like go over here and look around and check it out, right? But there's no incentive to do that in the game. It's just sort of a look, it's pretty, right? So like I said, I have criticism of the game. I love the game, but I am still very critical about it, right? Just not as, I'm not gonna like blindly hate on it, because I mean that's kind of what I did, because the game was buggy, and I think a lot of people do it because, well, I mean, people would be like, "Hey, the game's broken. Why do I need to try it out and look into it?" Right? But yeah, that's gonna have to end it here. I've been talking my ass off, even though maybe nobody's watching. Who knows? But yeah, we're like 1 hour and 20 minutes, which is decent for just me by myself. So yeah, that's probably gonna be it. Let me just take down the banner. So, yeah, as for what's gonna be next week, I'm not sure if I'm gonna have guests on next week, maybe, possibly. I wanna continue talking about video games, so I might do a Mario stream, talking about some of my favorite Mario games. Oh, I'm watching. Okay, Tony, okay. But, yeah, thanks, Chronic, for stopping by. Anybody who stopped by, I should do that first. Tony and Chronic, Aaron, Vortex, Finbar, who else do we got here? Da, 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 Arkham, right? Carl did show up. First time Carl showed up, so, thanks, Carl. Um, you know, so, I thank everybody, I obviously you guys showed up and I appreciate it. But I enjoy just doing this because I talk a lot and sometimes I just want to talk to the camera or not the camera, to the mic, I guess. But yeah, as I was saying, for next week, I might do a Mario ranking or talking about Mario. Uh, but Mario, there's a lot of Mario games, so I might have to like narrow it down to just the platformers, and sort of talking about what I would want to see more in the series and what games I absolutely fucking hate because I've pretty much beaten all the main Mario's now, and so I definitely want to talk about that. And I guess I still want to do a Rocky stream and all the movies that are coming out. Some other stuff I might plan like videos. I did want to do videos, like sort of just like in StreamYard talking. And then obviously I have an edit video that is coming maybe in April. It's about Ant-Man. So I'm almost finished that. And yeah, that might be it. That's all. I guess that would be it. But yeah. So normally I'm on the Geek Getaway, Tony stream. Sometimes I'm on Aaron stream. And yeah, and I also me and Meta are planning to do some things. So I'll probably be tweeting that out. So check me out on Twitter if you haven't. That's where you could probably see what I'm doing or what I'm gonna do next. And yeah, that's gonna be it. So thanks, guys. Peace.